All right, we're in Matthew chapter 22. And as we've seen all through the book of Matthew, a lot of the life and the ministry of Jesus has been full of people coming to Jesus and, trying to understand, trying to figure out what they should do, trying to get a law, a command, an idea of what will be the most pleasing to God. And we see that happen again in Matthew chapter 22, and it seems to happen a little bit because of this rivalry between the Sadducees and the Pharisees. We learn earlier in Matthew 22 that the Sadducees don't believe in the resurrection and the Pharisees do, and now the Sadducees hear that Jesus kind of stumped the Pharisees, so they come out with a question. The Pharisees see that Jesus had stumped the Sadducees, so the Pharisees come out with a question. Almost it feels like in the way that we sometimes do with our different denominations, like, oh, well, they don't seem to have a good answer for this, but maybe we'll have a better answer for this. But anyway, for whatever corrupt reasons, they come to Jesus and they say, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" And I don't really get the impression that this was this earnest question that they really wanted to have answered, but more that they were just trying to be clever, right? Trying to be clever, trying to see what Jesus would say, trying to test him. But Jesus answers with a really profound answer, and an answer that those of us who really do clamor to want to have a rule, to want to have a law, can cling to, and an answer that would be enough to keep us busy our entire life. And so I just wanted to talk about that today. So in Matthew chapter 22, verse 37, after Jesus is asked, what's the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind." That alone would be enough for me to focus on the rest of my life. Even if I had no other scripture, if I had no other calling, if that was it, that would take my lifetime to figure out how to love God with all of my soul, with all of my mind, with all of my heart. He says that, and then he says, "This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." Now, if it's hard for me to figure out how to just fully love God with everything I have, it's way harder to love my neighbor that way, because at least God is perfect. At least when God disappoints me or confuses me, or when I feel like he's hurt me, at least I can say, but he's huge and he's perfect and I can't even fathom him and he's so far beyond me. So I have a way to return to love when maybe my heart feels set against God for whatever reason. But to love my neighbor, I know my neighbor's not perfect. I see their flaws. I see the things they do that are disappointing and frustrating. I see the way they hurt me and hurt other people. But to really love your neighbor, that will take all of us, all of our lifetimes. That we could teach our children and they could teach their children, and each generation could build upon what we learn about how to truly love our neighbor. And we would not perfect that work until Jesus returned. So it's something to endeavor to do. I recently watched the documentary, "Won't You Be My Neighbor?" Of Fred Rogers, and he has become a hero of the faith for me as I've learned in my adulthood what kind of man he was, instead of just kind of my childhood impressions of, oh, I really, really loved Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and then I really, really, really thought it was boring when I got older and didn't want to have to watch it and thought it was lame, right? But as an adult, to learn who Fred Rogers was and what he was about, and to realize that when he was asking, "Won't you be my neighbor?" he was really endeavoring to love his neighbor as himself, and he wanted the whole world to be his neighbor, right? He wanted to love everyone with this kind of love that Jesus describes, but that it will take our lifetime to master. So if you haven't seen that documentary, I think you should. It's fantastic. I don't know if it'll be out anytime soon on video or on demand or on iTunes or anywhere that you can get it, but I highly recommend it. And in the meantime, those of us who want a law, who want a rule, this is enough to keep us busy. Okay, read Matthew chapter 3 tomorrow, and we'll talk about it. And definitely create something for the comments. I mean, just telling us what you thought is fantastic, but if you're in a creative mood, if you love to draw, if you love to sing, if you love to write, do something amazing in the comments. I'd love to see it. Thank you.